Welcome to Off the Record News. I'm your host, Diana Longrie. Thank you for tuning in. Off the Record News is brought to you from the Valley Access Studios in Stillwater. Now, Off the Record News, we focus on issues of interest in the local metropolitan area. Now, today I have with me Council Member Loren Sederstrom, Council Member from the City of Grant. And we've been featuring the City of Grant approximately once a month on these programs because they have a lot of challenges and discussions going on at their council meetings. Now, why is this important to our viewers out there? Well, one, the City of Grant is right on the edge between being rural, residential, and on the cusp of whether or not it should develop. There's that struggle going on in the community. Currently, they have regulations that have large lot requirements of several acres. And so if sewer and water comes into the community, that could potentially be crippling for those property owners because of that cost. And this issue is very important to continue to watch because just like all the other metropolitan cities in the metro area, their comprehensive plan for the next 10 years will have to be put together and submitted to the Metropolitan Council for approval and dissemination. I want to thank my guest tonight, Mr. Loren Sederstrom, Council Member of the City of Grant, for being here this evening. Thank you, Loren, for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And what we're going to do a little different tonight is we're going to kind of break the show up into 2 or 3 segments. The first part, I'm just going to walk you through what recently happened at the City Council meeting so you kind of get a flavor of what's going on. And this also applies to other communities, like we're saying. And then we're involved in a lot of litigation, and this is something very important. And I just have attended an Eckberg Glamour seminar on local government regulations. And basically, what they're structuring it is to structure ordinances for enforcement and revenue enhancement. So money is always an issue. And so what we're going to start with is with the recent City Council meeting. And I just have 3 little samples of the things that went on and some of the issues and how they were handled. So if we could play the first clip, please.
I see Kenny Johnson's not here this evening. So I'm going to ask this question of our city attorney, Mr. Sandberg over here. We are entering into a $108,000 per year contract. Mr. Johnson's not here to ask, is he subcontracting his work? Has he provided certificates of insurance for every contractor? Holding, and put them in with the city, name them as a additional insured. You're well aware of how that works, I'm sure. Because he is contracting, he is subcontracting. This exceeds $100,000 per year. Why are we not going out for a request for proposal? We thought when we got Kenny Johnson, it was great because we went out for a request for proposal when we had Miller and found a better deal. Why is our city not going out for a request for proposal? See if there's another good deal out there. And state statute says any work contracted in excess of $100,000 requires request for proposal. Mr. Sandberg, maybe you can tell me, did you review that statute to see if we have to go out for a request for proposal? Are you aware of it?
Am I aware of the statute?
Yes.
I am aware of the statute, and by the way, my name is Mr. Sandstrom. This is a contractor that the city has worked with for many years, and it's really just an extension of the previous contract, so I don't believe it needs to be bid in that regard.
I want to back up a bit because many of our viewers live in communities where the city has a public works department. And so this issue, particularly with regard to roads and having a road contractor, might not come up such as this, but the principles are the same in that all cities have contracts that they let out for services that they may have to put them out for requests for proposals. And in this case, with the City of Grant, it happens to be the road contract.
Yes, and we used to have multiple contractors, one for brushing, one for mowing, etc. And what they did is they just threw it on this one contractor's lap and just, hey, you can parcel the rest of it out. The interesting thing is when they did this, they changed the rules for the consent agenda, saying they needed a motion and a second and a vote by all three. So then they put this contract on the consent agenda, and of course with the majority, it never got a chance to be discussed, so they just voted it through. But what I'm going to...
You know, and that is a very important detail for our viewers to really put their hands around, because the consent agenda is reserved for those items that are typically routine in nature.
Phone bill, electric bill, those types of things.
That's exactly right. And so voting for an annual contract for something that conceivably might be required to go out for an RFP or request for proposals certainly would not be appropriate for a consent agenda item. And as you're indicating, an item can't even be taken off of the consent agenda by the minority because the majority will never agree to that. So in essence, there is no discussion about items that are not unanimous.
Okay. Well, what's interesting is we have another clip a little further in the meeting, and let's see what this is a very short clip. Let's see what Mr. Sandstrom has to say in this clip.
I want to explore that just very quickly as long as we have this on the floor. It was my understanding that contracts in excess of $100,000 for services were not required to go out to bid, only capital improvements or capital equipment. Is that correct?
I believe both capital improvements or potentially services as well can be within that bidding requirement. But as I stated before, the prior contract that we talked about was really an extension of an existing contract.
He just talked in circles. So that's all we're going to touch on that. Then there was
so in essence what they're saying is that because this is just an extension of a previous, or it's a renewal of a previous contract, that they didn't feel that they needed to go out for requests for proposals.
Called covering your butt. Okay, we're going to go to the next one. We got a lot of stuff to cover. This is just a 20-second short clip, and I'm abstaining from a vote. And normally you're not grilled on why you abstain, but let's watch this clip.
For no.
Abstain.
Abstain. Is there a reason for your abstention, sir?
You believe he's got to go?
Yes, I have it. That's all.
Do you not want to tell us your reason for your abstention?
Well, I haven't got a chance to review the last contract.
You haven't read the contracts? Okay, very good. And I also vote aye.
Very interesting. And they're not supposed to be asking for it. When someone abstains, they abstain, and that's it. Now let's go. We got another little thing. We have a development called Farms of Grant we talked about. We have a 20-second clip on that too, so if we could put that out there.
Council, this evening, the first agenda item and only agenda item is actually the Farms of Grant preliminary plat application. There is quite a bit of information in your packet this evening, so I'm going to do my best to actually just summarize the content and then open it up for questions from you with respect to the materials that were provided. So,
remind our viewers just briefly what the Farms of Grant plat is, just in brief.
320 acres, and they can have 32 building sites. They actually have 31. But what's weird about it is they maneuver down around through the wetlands. They have 5 to 7 acre lots, and then there's a 75 acre lot and a 53 acre lot that's up in the high dry land that borders County Road 12.
And that's going to be designated as farmland, correct?
Farmland.
So
that's right.
this plat combines the development in and around the wetlands and then preserves the farmland, which then are they going to put a covenant on that farmland to...
Oh, it's going to be, it has to stay in that thing. And they also are going to have a homeowners association, but the 75 acres and the 53 acres is not included in that homeowners association.
Okay.
We have a turn lane next that they're talking about, so if we could play that real quick.
Do they reflect the Washington County requirements for the right-of-way? Do these show them on there?
members of the council, yes, it does. They have been updated and revised to show the additional 15 feet that were that was requested by Washington County in their letter, which was attached.
Because this is on a county road and there's the county access, then that's why the county is asked to weigh in on this and to have the proper access for that number of new parcels that are going to have homesteads
Yeah,
on
this
them.
is, and it's a major artery. There's Lake Elmo Avenue and Stillwater Boulevard there, and so that's what that is. Now, the next thing, what we're going to kind of stay connected to this, but at the last planning commission, or one of the last planning commissions, they adjourned the meeting, and the clerk, the planner were sitting there, and three or four of the planning commission members, and they were looking at a computer screen, and they were discussing it after the meeting ends. Well, that's obviously a meeting of an open meeting violation.
That's correct.
And this next clip will show Larry Lanou making notice of this. So if we could play the next clip, it's about a minute long.
Kim over here, I was at the planning commission meeting that you had. Following the planning commission, and there's no...
Larry, why don't you wait to make comments till you come back here so you have a microphone?
Because
We have a microphone over here, Larry.
I'll come to a microphone
Everyone can hear you.
if you'd like.
Okay.
At this time, I'd like to serve our city clerk with a formal complaint for an open meeting violation following the planning commission meeting on this issue. The open meeting violation happened with our city planner, our city clerk, and 4 members of the
Fantastic.
planning
Larry, that's
commission.
fantastic. I appreciate the grandstanding. You're doing a fantastic job. Why don't you come on and sit
I
down?
will,
You can hand that to the attorney.
file that to the city
Go ahead,
attorney,
hand it
because
to the
Mr.
attorney,
Hubert,
Mr.
you
Lanou.
said that all council people will be treated equally and fairly.
And this is an important issue, and the question is that how does a minority council member, a council member who is, always voted down on anything that they bring up, how can they get their voice heard? I mean, having open meeting violations is a serious issue. That's something that has to be generally reported when the city audit is completed, because if your auditor is doing the job they're supposed to do, they actually provide a form to all the council members to indicate if there's been any incidences that they know of open meeting violations or other irregularities. And so what can a council member do to bring their city into compliance? This is one way a city council member could do it. Another way is to register a complaint with the iPad with the state of Minnesota. But again, you bring up a good question. How do you help your city become compliant and understanding how not to violate the open meeting law? Well,
the underlying issue here too is that everyone should be treated equally.
Yes.
If the ordinances are clear, no one gets an exemption, and we also have to hold the feet to the fire that they have to be truthful and honest with the data. And once again, we're shifting gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about the city newsletter, that they put a graph in there that was inaccurate. So if we could play that one, please.
Newsletter in the mail. It contained a lot of fake news. And as a matter of fact, it said, if you read the one document, it said that your school taxes are 35% of your property tax. I challenge any one of you sitting out there, look at your tax statement, see if your school taxes were 35%. In Matamidi School District, the city taxes are 53%. The Stillwater School District is 43%. So being that our city policy allows councilmen to write articles according to its own city policies, we were not allowed to do that. So the only one allowed to be in charge of the city newsletter is our Mayor Grant. So Mayor Tom Carr, or Mayor Jeff Huber, whatever. He's the one.
Good attention to detail, Larry.
Great detail here. And that's as much detail as you put on there when you said that you're responsible for a 35% tax for our schools. So we have false information put out there. If you read the other article, it talked about Scoop the Poop and Grant. We're more concerned. If you read the article in the city newsletter, it talked about getting your dog feces off the sidewalks in Grant so they don't go into the sewer system.
Yeah.
Great newsletter, folks. So let
Fantastic.
Lauren, maybe you
Thanks
talk
so
about
much,
that.
Larry, for cutting down.
On our last program focusing on Grant showed that pie chart, and discussed exactly this issue. And it's interesting that here we are at the city council meeting now addressing that issue, and yet there is no rebuttal as to where did those facts come from. And Loren, I have a question for you. Are there any sidewalks in the city of Grant?
That's what I was going to point out. It was a ludicrous article because there's not one sidewalk in the city of Grant. The only sidewalk that I'm aware of is up to the one-room school that serves their city hall. So that's kind of interesting.
So in other words, having the city newsletter spend space, print, ink, and whatever goes into it on an article that is totally inapplicable, that should have been addressed at this city council meeting as well.
Well,
why not put in articles that are more pertinent to the community, such as reviewing perhaps the ordinances having to do with livestock? I mean, because there are people within the community that have livestock. That would be relevant. Or having articles having to do with when's, what are some tips about baling hay? That might be more relevant than how and when you should take dog feces off the sidewalks of the city of Grant.
Well, the problem is, Diana, it's the lack of transparency. They're trying to hide everything, and that's just what I'm saying. They don't put the important issues in there. An example is the MS4, which is a stormwater
Yes.
runoff. That there's supposed to be an annual hearing to be compliant with federal regulations. This year, they did not have one. They just said, well, if you come to this community cleanup, we'll have some information there. So they never had a hearing. They never took input. And about 6 people in total showed up for their city cleanup, and there was nothing in the dumpster, and it was a complete joke. So they're trying to subvert any information to getting out to people they want to keep. It's called the mushrooms syndrome. Keep them in the dark and feed them manure.
And yet that's kind of ironic, coming that it's from the city of Grant, where I think that it's sort of a joke, but it's pretty close, that there are more horses there than people.
Yes, very high concentration, horses and horse apples. Well, the next one we have Sandstrom, the attorney, and that's about a minute long, and we'll see what he has to say.
Okay.
Had followed the procedure to get this on the agenda. Thank you very much, Mr. Sederstrom. Mr. Sandstrom, I'm going to turn this over to you for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I did take a look at this memo for Mr. Sederstrom, and in fact, we had a nice conversation about it at the end of last week, and as I told Mr. Sederstrom, I intended to put together a written formal memo for him on that issue, on these issues that he's raised.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I was unable to complete it before tonight's meeting, but I think I will have that done by the end of this week, and I'll send it to not only Mr. Sederstrom, but I'll send it to the entire council so all the council can see the input.
Yeah, Mr. Carr.
Who requested you do that?
Yes.
memo?
Mr. Sederstrom did.
Who ordered you to do that?
Did he have, okay, I'll withdraw mine.
I won't.
Nobody directed you.
No, I have a comment. Mr. Sandstrom, that is revenue enhancement. We want to be very careful with that. But all jokes aside, that is an important thing because all the members of the council, and I appreciate Loren doing this, all the members of the council need to have a quick and handy reference guide to say, well, how did this get done? Why is this lawsuit being done? Why is this prosecution being done and not this one? And those are good questions. I think that if we all have that memo, we'll be able to answer those questions both for ourselves and for any constituents or residents who may have those questions. I'm going to move forward.
You can see me off camera grabbing the smelling salts when I was going to faint for him complimenting me on something.
Well, and what I found, I did notice that, but what I found ironic is the side comment, I know he meant it in satire, to the attorney about revenue enhancement. Now, I know that we're going to be talking a little bit in our program about the litigation that the city of Grant enacted against council member Larry Lanou. Now,
That was, I want to
me,
point out, that was from a complaint from before he was the mayor, Mr. Huber. And he's the one that started rolling, but we're going to get into that a
But
little.
you see, my point is this, is that that's why it's ironic that Mr. Huber is the one making comments about revenue enhancement to the attorney, because Mr. Huber has engaged in activities that have certainly been revenue enhancement for the city attorney. And that's the point, and that's why it's ironic that he even made that point.
The other point I want to make is I had about 12 or 15 questions that I want specifically answered, and it didn't come back in that format. It came back in a narrative that wove around and a whole number of things. So he didn't answer all the questions directly.
Oh, boy.
But now we're kind of shifting a little bit. We're talking about litigation, and we have a little bit longer one, about a 2-minute clip, and where Larry Lanoux, who is being sued, and they actually asked to put him in jail. Him and his wife.
But let's back up. Now, this is what we were talking about.
The
This
conditional
is
use permit,
The
yes.
conditional use permit, whether or not Mr. Lanoux was grandfathered in or not, and that Councilmember Huber, at the time councilmember, now he's mayor, had lodged a complaint with the city to bring forth litigation and enforcement of non-compliance with the requirement to have a conditional use permit against his own fellow city council member,
Absolutely.
Larry Lanoux. And so that's the litigation that we're talking about. So when we're talking about, again, about revenue enhancement, where is that coming from? But go ahead. Go ahead and set up the clip for us.
Okay, they then, he went in front of Judge Moss, and Judge Moss says, well, it's too bad.
And when was this hearing?
This was in January, February, and they then said, well, yeah, you're not grandfathered in because you enhanced your operations. Well, obviously, and so then she stripped him of his grant and told him he had to apply for a CUP, a conditional use permit for his operation, which he did. And we're going to be getting into the details of that. So if we could play the next clip, we'll start with him talking about it, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Sandstrom, can you tell me, currently, our city council, and it hasn't been pulled yet, but we entered into litigation with a gentleman, which is now going to the Supreme Court, and that deal is against using the city seal. And can you give me a rough estimation of what the city has spent, and if it goes through the Supreme Court and the city loses, what will the city gain, whether it wins or not? I mean, we're probably into $30,000 worth of litigation, which will net the city or the person a $250 fine, which goes to the state. So that, to me, is not, Ekberg Lambers, in my opinion, is not working in a fiduciary manner to the city of Grant. There was no council decision to start this litigation. In fact, we've gotten into a lot of litigation. I attended your seminar, and it said we have to treat all citizens equally and fairly. And I'm here to tell you that when you sent out letters threatening Joyce Welander because she had a 3x3 gopher sign out there.
We're not going to talk about people who are not here, Larry.
Equal and fair.
She is not here to defend herself or to answer to anything that you have to say. If you have a question for Mr. Sandstrom, say it.
I'm
Let's
asking,
move on.
are we going to treat all citizens equally and fair? And as a council person, Mr. Huber started litigation against myself. He filed a formal complaint. Now we're going. He just got served a summons because I've never filed a formal complaint prior, especially to being on a city council.
And this has to do
I
with the city legals process. How? I'm
Yes,
going to
it is,
shut you down
because-
here in about 10 seconds.
Because I don't believe councilmen should be the ones filing formal complaints on any of its citizens.
Well,
We
good.
set policy. We should not be out there in calling for enforcement.
Yep.
And not a single person.
That
When we
is
got
an
into the litigation
excellent opinion,
on
and
the
now we are done. Thank you for your opinion.
Yep,
we
so
are done
Mr.
with that.
you
Would you
are
like to read that
responsible
community
that-
calendar, please?
just for the record,
Mr.
Mayor Carr
Lanoux,
supports litigation instead of black ties.
Enough.
School board meeting.
He gets a lot of mileage out of that gavel, I can tell you that. There's going to be a hole in the desk before the end of the year.
So in this clip focused on 3 different issues. One is that the first case that Mr. Lanoux was talking about is the case where there was a seal, purportedly the seal of the city of Grant, that was used by the Charter Commission when the Charter Commission was in effect. and that the city of Grant was looking at becoming a charter city.
Well, the other thing important about that is the man that created it in the contest never assigned the rights to the city of Grant, and the city of Grant never copyrighted or patented, has any legal right to that. So with those rights not being transferred, in my opinion, it's a moot point, but go on.
Right, and then the second issue that Councilmember Lanu was talking about was an incident where one person was cited for having a non-conforming sign on her property, whereas somebody just down the street had a similar non-conforming sign on their property, and they weren't cited, but they are favorable to the council majority, whereas the other lady who had the non-conforming sign, who received the citation, is not supportive of the council majority. And so that is, again, talking about treating residents equally. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Next clip is a very short clip, 10, 12 seconds, and you will see me serving Mayor Huber in response to Mr. Lanu's lawsuit. So here we go. I would like to add this and have for discussion. You've been served.
You can hand that right down to the attorney and the mayor. Thank you very much.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular agenda.
Thank you very much.
Well, you know, that's the first time that I guess I've ever seen that a council member who's been served a subpoena to appear just basically throws it off and says, here, I'm going to give it to the city attorney. Because keep in mind, the city attorney is not the attorney for the individual council people. The city attorney is only the attorney for the city.
Now what we're going to delve further into this, we're going to be going to a website called the Grant Reporter, okay? And they have spelled all this information out. We have PDFs that we can read along if we go. And this really gets very specific into this area of this case where they're requiring him to get a conditional use permit. And he provided the information. And well, you see all the details, so I'll just,
let's bring up the newspaper article and then we'll talk over it.
Okay,
let's take a look.
Grant Reporter.
Okay, and let's scroll up as we're talking about it. There we go.
Keep going. Okay, stop right there.
And what I find fascinating is that you see that one of the remedies for this constructive contempt that they were seeking was to have council member Larry Lanu and his wife jailed indefinitely. Now, of course, to me, being an attorney, I would tell you that asking for that type of redress is simply grandstanding and really just trying to make a mockery of all this, because any attorney and judge out there knows that for constructive contempt, that generally speaking, you would not be jailed. You're given an opportunity to correct whatever that contempt might be, if contempt is found, and you are certainly not jailed indefinitely. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, I was at the hearing and I took copious notes. I have about 8 pages. And the bottom line, and I'll go to the forward and we'll look at some of the others up between there. One, the judge said immediately when she sat down, no one is going to jail. There is not contempt. The Eckberg Glamours wanted their attorney's fees. She said absolutely not. They also wanted him to have another $4,000 for his conditional use permit. She said not. The other thing is they wanted a completed survey. And I'm going to show you an example later on in the show. You don't need a survey by a surveyor for $4,000 to $10,000.
But it's a special type of survey that they wanted. It's not just a typical survey, correct?
They wanted all the distances, and he did in fact hand this in, but they said nope, we're not accepting it. And let's put the clip back up.
Bring up the newspaper article.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
And basically, Eckberg Glamours lost big time, and 5 or 6 things they lost, okay?
Right. And
go scroll up a little bit more.
Continue to scroll through the article.
City requested, okay, made several, Lanew's made several attempts over the last year to submit a CUP.
Well, and what I found fascinating about this is that he did make a good faith effort to submit a conforming CUP application. He submitted the, $3,000 fee required, correct? And
All the paperwork.
but yet, part of that process is that you are to meet with the city planner. I understand that the city planner refused to set up a meeting with him.
Refused to meet with him. Then he set up an appointment, as it said on that PDF, set up an appointment with the building inspector, and he was instructed by the people at City Hall not to meet with him. And now this building inspector had been out to his place at least 8 times because he had a fire in his chimney, and that was gone through. So he's made every effort to do that. Now let's go to put the PDF number 3 up if we could, and we'll get going on that. And I tried to hold Lanew's to different standards than other residents. They wanted to have another $3,000 to $4,000. They didn't have to be held responsible for the city's legal fees.
Well, and I think what came out of this is that their requirement for Mr. Lanew about this survey issue, about the extent to which he had to go to provide this special, very in-depth survey, was a different standard than what they required for other individuals who were also asking or have in the past asked for a conditional use permit. I know that many people in the city of Grant have used the survey that you can get from Washington County. And certainly if you can't rely upon the survey that's been done by Washington County, well, then what good is the survey that's been done by Washington County, correct?
That's right. Well, I actually have a letter here that Eckberg Glammer sent out, and they said that they failed to provide the items. Okay, the buildings, because they were not prepared by a professional. They also said, but you see the ones from the county, something called scalable. Okay, in other words, you can put it on your computer and you can tell exactly how many feet away from the property line it is. And
that's really the main gist of requiring this, is so that you know how far buildings are from property lines or other issues like either where the well is or the septic system and those types of things. You want to know those distances. And so what you're saying is that from that Washington County survey, because it's scalable, it's all right there for you.
Well, what's even more hilarious is number 6. The site plan simply identifies MP where the manure pile is located. No dimensions are provided. What an idiot. They're never saying, if you keep hauling another wheelbarrow out of manure, is it the same size? No, it grows. Then you spread it, it gets smaller. I keep my manure pile. It ends up being about 30 by 60 feet long, about 2 foot high. It gets piled up all summer. Then in the fall, it's spread on the hay field so it'll decompose. The snow will push it down. You can't put it out in the summer because if you're spreading manure, then you bale hay. You're putting horse manure with the hay you're baling. It doesn't make sense. So that was one of the reasons that they turned it down, and they said, based upon the deficiencies, the application is incomplete and not valid. Accordingly, the city is denying the Lanew's application for conditional use permit. Well, they already had said they didn't deny it in court. This is, in fact, a lie, once again, of what's going on. They got a large format, scalable GIS from Washington County Public Works and Land Management Division. Okay, if it's scalable, that means you can find out the distances. And Kazi's, it was a little bar that we had down there. By the way, you can see you can see it's Eckberg Glamours. It's a 3-page turn down. They don't apply things fairly. Kazi's, which is that little restaurant that was redone, tavern, they said, well, we want a scalable drawing. Well, it wasn't that the drawing wasn't scalable. It's that the planner couldn't figure out to do it on her computer. So it was her incompetency.
Right, and what I want to point out here, Mr. Sederstrom, is here you have, in this instance, you have the city attorney supposedly representing the city and then litigating against a council member of the city they represent. Now, to me, that appears to be some type of a conflict of interest. And certainly, if the city of Grant was going to be engaged in litigation to enforce this conditional use permit, I think the better and high road for that law firm would have been to recuse themselves, because you see, now they are in the position of working for a client who has, as one of their council members, somebody they're litigating against. And so it would have been, I think, more appropriate for that law firm to recuse themselves and bring in somebody else to do this enforcement action.
Well, the other situation is the planner should have met with the person by law. You know, everybody else, they meet with everybody else, okay? If there's a problem, they'll say, well, they'll send it back.
Well, and I was told that part of the reason why they do that is part of that pre-planning, so that by the time they get to the city council meeting, where it's going to be reviewed and either approved or denied, that the applicant has gone through and done everything that the planner would be expecting.
Well, we have to back
That's why you have those pre-planning meetings with your CUP process in the city of Grant.
Well, not only that, he was denied due process because he was never allowed to even appear at a planning commission meeting. The planning commission reviews all conditional use permits and looks at the validations of it. Then it adds additional stipulations, makes recommendations. Well, you need a merry-go-round in your front yard, or whatever they come up with, which wouldn't surprise
But
me.
the application, I understand, never even got that far.
That's the whole point.
Because the city just decided and deemed that it was incomplete, but that incompleteness was based upon them putting up the roadblocks to completion, which meant not meeting with the city planner. I mean, Mr. Lanou wanted to meet with the city planner, but the city planner wouldn't set an appointment.
They wouldn't even meet with the building inspector. Why don't we put number 3 up there again and see if we've covered it? There's some more
Yes.
points on there, because the Grant Reporter website covered this very completely, talked about all the things. Okay, scroll up a little bit. No, the other direction. Go up. Okay, stop right there. Clear for Judge Moss, the case isn't about a CUP, but really a council city majority leader of a personal vendetta. The vendetta is none other by Huber, who filed the complaint against. Huber has a history of filing these false complaints. When he was served, he tried to file a complaint against me for trespassing. Now, I was functioning as an officer of the court. Okay, could we put that back up again, please?
Well, when you served Mr. Huber previously, you were serving as a process server.
That's right.
And a process server, his property wasn't posted as no trespassing. You had no reason to believe that a process server could not be there.
That's right. Can we put the clip back up, and we're going to go up a little bit to the Aaron Brockovich part so we can read that? He's currently working with Aaron Brockovich and Bob Baucox at Resource Management to protect the health and safety of children on the toxic landfill, which Wildwood School is built on. The letter recognizes Lanou for being an outstanding citizen or public figure, because him and I lobbied a couple of years ago down to have a no school and a dump site bill.
Yes.
Okay, let's go up some more, scroll up some more, see what else we have. Okay, go to the next one if you could, please, number 4. And okay, here are some of the comments. Certainly, Eckberg Glamour's put out a municipal seminar, and it's all about enhancement. This is one man writing the comment. BP Motorsports, one of the reasons I probably will never return to Grant or Family Dairy Farm was constantly scrutinized by the yuppies that moved out there. Again, we're done with that now. But the point I'm making is, come back to us, that there's a lot of this shenanigans going on. And they were personally, I mean, it's outlandish that they would ask the 5 things they asked. They wanted, put in jail. They want them fined. They wanted legal fees. They wanted another $4,000. When in fact, they were the ones that put roadblocks.
Yes.
Now, we're going to go to another one. Let's show you another CUP that was actually granted. So if we could put the next one up. There we go. Gee whiz, looks familiar.
Oh, so you have a CUP
I have a
for
conditional use
your
permit.
property. Yep.
Look, let's just go, just slowly go up. They say street address and location, horse farm, that's what I'm doing. Switch from breeding to boarding, I switched it.
Yep.
And that is what my conditional use permit, the application.
And that was your application. That seems pretty short and sweet.
Okay, now let's go to I have 2 site plans. If we
Okay,
could put
so we're going to look at your site plans that you submitted with that application.
Absolutely.
Let's take a look. Let's see how
these were
detailed
very,
they are.
very simple. Very simple.
and let's see the professional drawing of them. Okay, so this is
Well,
site
scroll
plan
up.
number 1.
Keep scrolling way up because I'm at the bottom of the page. That's my property. Okay, keep going.
Okay.
Okay, stop right about there. Now there is my very professional drawing. See, it says shop on one side, barn, and it has house in the middle and those arrows and the driveways.
Right.
I mean,
And so did you hire a skilled professional at hundreds of dollars an hour to do those little boxes there? Let's bring those boxes up again and see the professional nature of those. Yes, let's take a look there.
basically what this was.
So did you draw those or did you hire somebody to do that?
I drew them myself.
And did anybody object to receiving this as part of your CUP application at the time?
Absolutely not.
Okay, did you, okay, so
Let's go
sounds
to the
good.
next one, which is
So
more
let's-
detailed.
Yeah, let's look at the next one.
Okay, scroll it up a little bit. Okay, a little bit more. Well, okay, stop right there. You can see
Yeah,
the numbers I wrote in there,
yeah,
how far everything is apart.
Yeah.
You can see the driveways penciled in. Okay, if you can go up, scroll up a little bit more, please. We'll get up to the road. We can see where the road, there's the house. And
Yeah.
the site plan, you see I have penciled in the house is 64 feet off the road. It's 96 feet off the east lot line.
and I see that you've indicated that you've got little aprons off of your drives onto the main thoroughfare,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't indicate how wide those aprons are, Mr. Loren Sederstrom.
I don't
There
indicate
must-
how wide the driveway is either. And now I got more professional on this because I used a computer to put house 28 by 52.
I see that.
I got really professional, so that kind of gives you an idea of what's going on there.
And did you have to present your plan to a city planner when you did your CUP?
No, I did not. I went directly to the Planning Commission, and they asked me a few questions, and they passed it right through, and that was that. You
And
know?
that was before, though, you were a city council member, correct?
That's right. That's before I was anything. This was, let's see, I was informed in '01 by a former council person that lives at the end of my street that you board. I had 6 horses of my own and I had 3 from other people. Okay. Well, you're boarding horses. You have to get a conditional use permit. So I then went in, got a conditional use permit, gave me $2,000. It was $2,000 or $3,000, I believe. Submitted the paperwork, very similar to this, and we passed it through. They gave it to me. Well, it's really interesting because that I think was in '01. In '02, they changed the rules and said you can board up to 10 horses without a conditional use permit. So then I just wasted that. So then I had switched it. Already had switched from breeding stock to boarding, and I didn't even have to go in front of the Planning Commission with that. They just okayed it and
Well,
submitted it, and it's real interesting that they did that, you know.
Well, and I think the point that is to be made here is that that was prior to becoming involved in the local politics. And that unfortunately what you're demonstrating is that occasionally the politics of the community gets intertwined with how certain people are treated in the community. And I think that what you and Larry Lanou are trying to put out there is that the enforcement of the ordinances should be equal for everyone.
Well, this is the story getting into how I got involved in politics. A friend of mine was a dentist, went to one of the meetings, and someone had mentioned, yeah, there's a guy up in 107th that's got a great big pile of manure in his pasture. And I was relatively shocked because I was busy building my house and my farm and, taking care of horses. So I went to the next city council meeting. And I said, I've heard that's been addressed. I was charged that I have a pile of manure in my pasture. I said, I'm a near organic horse farmer, and my manure is spread on the fields. That is a pile of dirt from where there was a steep bluff at the edge of the road. I had an excavator come in and put a gentler slope so I could put fence posts there so the horses wouldn't impale themselves on the fence post. I said, that's what is there. It's a pile of dirt. And I said, if you cannot tell the difference between dirt and manure, there's a credibility issue. That pile of dirt is still there today, or most of it anyway.
Yeah.
So that's what got me started. And we kind of came into that. And then I finally got in the planning commission. I ran with Potter, and he got in, I didn't. And then he got in and didn't do much. And then I ended up running again and winning. And what I would like to see is transparency in the community. So no matter who you are, you go there, you're treated fairly. You're not shuffled one way or another. I also want to see ordinances filed. One of the problems we've had is some of these things never see daylight. For example, we have an ordinance that says there has to be 300 feet of frontage to build a house. Well, in the 70s, there was a 15-acre lot divided into 3 lots. The houses were built in 76 and 77. These people 2 years ago came forward and wanted to build a house in the last 5-acre lot. Well, first of all, we're supposed to be 10 acres with 5-acre minimums. And it's on it, the 2 houses have a shared driveway. Now, in 1977, that was allowed. Fast forward to now, it's not allowed. That never made it to the planning commission. It never made it to the city council. The people were allowed to build the house. And by ordinances, the driveway has to be wide enough for a fire truck to get down there, and there has to be a cul-de-sac large enough to turn the fire truck around for health, safety, and welfare. I drove my heavy-duty 3/4-ton Dodge down there, and I had a tough time getting it turned around. So I don't know how in the world. Again, this is something that has never seen daylight. The community was never aware of it. What's basically happening in the city of Grant is the mayor and the deputy mayor, Carr and Huber, are running it like a fiefdom. They think it's their kingdom, and they just let the administrator and the planner do whatever they want. And if whatever day it is and whatever they feel like doing, that house should have never been built on that back lot. That is against all our ordinances. Why wasn't it brought to the spotlight? Why wasn't it brought forward? And we're having things like that.
And because at the very least, there should have been an application for a variance. That if for some reason they wanted to make a narrower driveway, they should have brought that, a narrower driveway than required by your ordinances. Well, then they should have asked for a variance. If they wanted to have a smaller cul-de-sac than what is required by your ordinances, there should have been an application for a variance. I mean, that is the way that it's done in all the other municipalities that have these types of ordinances. If you want to utilize your property, but for whatever reason you can't conform to what those laws are,
you have to prove hardship.
Yeah, you apply for a variance and you talk about the hardship that's presented to you, and that goes through a planning commission, and then it goes before council, because that is the process for proper land use.
And it should be consistent.
Yes.
The other thing is, it's real interesting, you put a new roof on your house or change a furnace, they want you to get a building permit. That is revenue enhancement. If you're hiring a professional to put a furnace in, why do you need to spend the money to get a permit? Not only that, you know where the money goes from the permit? It doesn't go to the city. It goes to the building inspector. So basically you have someone working on commission and they're just saying, have at it, inspect it, you got the money. That's got to be good. I mean, there's got to be $100,000 to $150,000 a year in that. It's just really crazy. Again, it's revenue enhancement is what we're talking about. And can we pull up 472? I want to show you something. This is from the seminar that I went to. Okay, scroll up a little bit, if we could. Okay, stop right there. I went to this seminar. It was really interesting. Our city attorney left a message on my voicemail saying, I noticed you signed up for our seminar. I want you to behave yourself and not be disruptive. I was in shock, and I have sent a complaint into the city and said I want a public apology on that. I am not disruptive. You've seen me at different meetings.
Yes.
And so that was ridiculous, but click that off. You see, it's code enforcement. Okay, that's what they spent almost an hour on. And basically they say they want the codes written so tight that you can fine people because that forces them to comply. So, you know, then they talked about difficult employees, how to pay for infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. It was an interesting seminar.
Yeah.
And I've went to the engineers seminar, I've went to this seminar. I do believe in continuing education. I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm trying to keep up with what's happening. Again, you know, the letter of denial that we talked about a little earlier, there was no reason for that. When they won't meet, the planner always will meet with someone, okay, because she doesn't particularly happen to care for Larry Lanou. She wouldn't meet. They could have met in the office with the mayor or whoever else they wanted just to cover the issues, but they refused to do that. He has been denied due process. And by the way,
And then the conclusion of the hearing was, you talked about all the things that were denied. What was the one thing then that the court did say?
There had to be a site plan, but it doesn't have to be drawn by a surveyor. It has to be a site plan with the scales in there. And it is possible to take that GIF, whatever it is, overhead, that survey from the county and put numbers to it. The thing that they were refusing is Larry said that his building was 84 by 90. But they said, no, it's wrong, because the GIS says it's 90 feet wide. And he tried to explain to them there's a 3-foot overhang for the eaves. And they wouldn't accept that.
Right.
And the building inspector could have came out and just looked and said, yes, there's a 3-foot overhang. You could I have a measuring wheel that I use, and it's about 2 feet high, and you walk along and the numbers click off.
Yes.
So you can tell pretty close. And so you can verify the numbers that are on.
Absolutely. And that would be an appropriate role for the building inspector to confirm that the numbers on the site plan are accurate. I mean, that's very simple to do. And I thought it was good that the judge also came forward and said that Mr. Lanou did not have to pay another filing fee to submit the rest of the materials for the conditional use permit application.
Well, Eckberg Lammers got turned down on 5 things. They basically lost big time. So anyway, we're going to see how that plays out. Now this is kind of related, we're going to go forward. If you could put up that 463, please.
So tell our viewers now what the next topic is going to be about.
It's about the pollution in the city of Grant, and how the Wildwood School, they put that sewer in there and the pollutants travel down.
As a result of building the new school.
Yes,
on
the
Bel Air.
granulars fill underneath the sewer mound. It's about 1.5 miles away from Lost Lake, but the elevation, the school is probably 20 feet, 30 feet higher. You go down a hill as you go into Willerny. So we all know how gravity works.
Yes.
Okay, let's
scroll
it back down, please.
What is this that we're looking at?
This is a letter from Rice Creek Watershed talking about the pollution issues that have been brought up. It said, okay, everyone, we know Larry Lanoon's request to make everyone aware of the pollution in the old Bel Air sanitation site in Montemedi. I do have to say I'm finding it's hard to ignore this issue. I was sent 10, 12 pictures from Sheila Dewusky showing the pollution in Lost Lake, just north of White Bear Lake, and I'm actually it's south. I'm wondering what is causing the problem. It certainly looks awful and been degraded through the years. Scroll up a little bit. Rice Creek watershed goal is to relieve flooding and improve the quality of waters in our district. What are we going to do about this? We are planning to visit Hall's Marsh. Maybe we can go, she says, to relieve flooding by repairing a culvert in the marsh and along fixing sanitary sewage system that's owned by Monomade, so as the waste from the surrounding area will not contaminate White Bear Lake any more than necessary. What's wrong with this picture? What about the pollution going into White Bear Lake from the north side of Lost Lake? I think we are in the mix of taking care of this problem or helping Larry and other concerned citizens to find out why Lost Lake has this pollution. I know I've been told by any parking lot, ice rink, et cetera, on Monomate School District property has to meet our rules. If it does, we have to permit it. And we are told that is the PCA, the DNR. Who else's problem is it to fix or permit it, to stop it, to do something about it? I am sure we're all in this together. Check out the website to see the grant newspaper has to say, and then go to the second website for the Bowcox letter. And okay, if you can go to the next one, please. This will be a picture of what they're talking about.
Okay.
We can get that.
And on previous programs, we have covered some of this issue about the pollution in Lost Lake and the contamination. That's a Lost Lake photo. Now describe what we're looking at in this picture.
Okay, this is a picture. You're looking into the lake, and you can see the green slimy stuff floating on top, and you can see the stuff in the bottom. Now, previously we showed a lot of rust.
Right, yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
This normally in the spring of the year, we do not get all this green slime. Normally that's the end of August.
Right.
But this starts out in the spring with this green slime, and that's what raises our concern.
Right.
So,
because there's some reason why that is being produced so early in the year. And I know that they've done testing on Lost Lake, and it is now one of those bodies that has been classified as an impaired water, correct?
that's right, absolutely. And was really interesting, Bob Bowcox and Aaron Brockovich wrote a very positive letter saying that he's
In support of Larry
in
Lanou.
support of Larry Lanou, and they said they will testify at the state capitol when this no school in a dump site law comes up, and they pointed out litigating.
So you and Mr. Lanou are looking to continue with your efforts to get that
We have it in the hopper again.
legislation enforced.
Because of the budget and what they're going through this year, but it will be in the hopper to be heard right away next year. It's called No School in a Dump Site, and they have assigned a new number, so it used to be 957, but it's 1,086 or something, I'm
Okay.
not sure. But what it says is, if you have built a school in a dump site, now there's 12 of them in the state of Minnesota, you must notify parents that this school was built in a dump site. Now that doesn't mean you're sending them letters. I testified at the last Senate hearing on this. What you can do, there's a newsletter that comes out every year to schools. And they have to talk about air quality, asbestos, any pesticides or herbicides. And you could simply add that the Wildwood School was built on a former Superfund site to make parents aware of it.
Right. Now, and this will be good show material for when you come back again sometime to tell us about the updates on those efforts. So we've come to the end of our program, Mr. Sederstrom. I want to thank you for coming on the program today and giving us these updates. And viewers, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Off the Record News. We'll see you again next week with more information. Bye-bye.